Well, we are in week 2 of a series called Finding Truth, and the series is on Rightnow Media, which means our lesson is going to be through video, and we'll just say a little bit. We'll look at the Bible immediately after that, and then we'll see if we have some time to split into some groups and talk through some discussion questions. But today what we're going to look at is how our search for truth is magnified by how we view ourselves. Like that has an impact on how we understand even the concept of truth. And so that's what we're going to be unpacking this morning. We're going to get right into it. We're going to read that passage today in Ephesians. Go ahead and take your Bibles, open up to Ephesians chapter 2. I think what we see is that both of these stories, they emphasize something that Francis mentioned as he was kind of recapping some of these stories, and it's that things can change in a moment. That something can happen that can alter the direction of your life in some kind of drastic and sometimes permanent way. But what I think is highlighted here in these stories is the fact that an interaction and continual interaction with Christ can drastically change your life for the good. Especially as we're living by His word. Psalm 34:8 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in Him." And so if we're looking at what does it mean to find truth, it's all about experiencing God. It's about being in God's presence. But sometimes there's something that gets in the way of us experiencing that, and it's our own identity. It's how we view ourselves. It's this desire that we have to be accepted by others. And it's a struggle that happens no matter how old you are. I mean, this is something that you're going to experience throughout your entire life, is this desire to be accepted by other people. I can remember being in middle school and in high school and kind of having a group of friends, and I really wasn't necessarily the instigator, but there's lots of times when in my circle of friends, we kind of be picking on and making fun of someone or groups of people, and sometimes it would be repeated times when we would just make fun of this one. And I can remember feeling like this pit in my stomach type feeling, like I wasn't comfortable kind of being part of it. But looking back on it, it seems like my desire to be accepted kind of overrided my care for other people. And in other words, I wasn't really active in doing anything to stop it, because really what I cared about was being accepted by my group of friends. Like, well, I'm in this group and I'm in this circle, and I'm not being the target of bullying, or I'm not the target, so I don't need to think about it or worry about it. And sometimes that can be the mindset that we have. I mean, it's not always a bad thing to desire to be accepted, because if we're desiring to be accepted, sometimes that just means that we're just trying to be a good person. Because when people are accepted, it's generally because they're likable and they're kind and they're encouraging. So all those things are good. So those things are good. We should be striving to do those things. But here's where the problem comes in. Here's where it can be a bad thing. It's when our care about what others think supersedes what we assume God is thinking about us. It's caring more about what others think about our actions and behaviors and words and who we are than what God thinks about who we are. You know, there's a command that a lot of you guys may be familiar with, that we're not supposed to worship anything above God. You know, do not make for yourself any idol that you can worship above me. And a lot of times we think of that as like these little statues that people, and when we think of it that way, it's okay, I'm not doing that. I'm not making a little statue and worshiping down to it. But a lot of times it's just simply the character traits, like who we're choosing to become is what translates into what we're worshiping. So if you are saying, I care more about what others think than what God thinks, then you tend to maybe have acceptance be an idol. Like you're worshiping the idol of acceptance instead of God. The passage that Francis was reading from, hopefully you guys are there, Ephesians chapter 2. I want to read through it real quick. It's verses 1 through 10. This is what it says. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it's the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do. What Paul is doing, so Paul wrote this, what he's describing here is this complete transformation. It's what exists in our life from before we're living and choosing to live and care about God and his commands to after. To that moment when we're willing to accept God's gift of salvation and this humongous transformation that is necessary to take place. And what he describes it as moving from death to life. I mean, it's a huge transformation that exists here. But I want to highlight verse 10. Because this is what we're created for. Paul, this is how and what purpose you were created for. He says, we were saved. You've been given salvation for this. It's to do good works. But not just that, to do good works that he prepared for us. You know, I started thinking about even just this idea of preparation. You know, when you think about a trip you guys go on. Right? When you go on a trip, you prepare to go on a trip. And the longer that you go, the more that you have to prepare. And the more that you have to prepare for something, the more excited that you get for that because of all these steps of preparation. And you know, when things don't happen then according to plan, it's really easy to get disappointed. This year's a perfect example. You think back in January, that nothing kind of happened according to the plan, and how we were preparing things to happen in our mind. You know, things that we are just earnestly preparing for that don't come to fruition, that don't happen, it's frustrating. And so I'm thinking about that. I mean, that's just the human tendency, the human side of it. So I'm thinking about it from God's perspective. Okay, if God is saying here that he's prepared me for doing these good works, what would it feel like for him, for me, to accomplish these things? Well, like, what would be going through his mind if he has laid out all of these good works for me to accomplish, and I say, nah, God, I'm all right. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not going to worry about anything that you prepared for us, that you prepared for me. You see, there's there's so much damage then in the relationship that you are hopefully trying to cultivate with God. If you're choosing to ignore what He's desiring you to pursue, that there's going to be a strain in this relationship that you are hopefully trying to cultivate with God. Because that's what we're supposed to be doing as believers. And as believers, He set you aside for something, for some kind of service, for some kind of good work. He wants you to just simply take hold of that. I mean, that's what I want in my life. And so it's certainly what I want you to see and to take hold of in your life as well. Understanding that your relationship with Christ reshapes your identity. And then that affects everything. You are a new creation in Christ, and He wants you to lean into that, to do the good things that He's planned for you to do. Let me pray. God, thank you for this time. Be with us as we just split up here for even just a few minutes to talk and consider some of the things that you put on our hearts and our minds this morning, and just help us to be challenged continually by your word. In Jesus' name, amen.